I've got a 6-unit that's about to should be completing next month, which is exciting. I've got another 6-unit that has just started construction. And I've got a 10-unit townhouse project that is also under construction. So that's framing has started there. And then I've got a 94-unit apartment building that is under contract, and been working on that project, I guess, since January or so. And we are about to submit for DP on that one. So yeah, I guess that's whatever that is.
What is that? 6 plus 6 plus 10, 22, 22 and 94 is what? 616? 116?
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah, 116.
As you know, I see. I already knew the answer before I asked the question, but still, every time I hear that, I'm very proud of you. I'm very happy for you. Hey, Christine, how are you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Russell, I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
If I was any better, there'd be 2 of me. Yeah. Oh,
love it.
Yeah, that's about as good as the jokes will get today. So, by the way,
good.
I see by your background you're at the lake house now. I see that.
I am, yeah, full on summer mode over here.
Yes, you are, and you just got back from Europe, I believe, wasn't it? Where were you off to?
We were in London, England, and Gothenburg, Sweden. So we went over there for my son was having a soccer tourney. He was playing in the Gothia Cup, which is the largest youth soccer tourney in the world, actually. So we were over there for that. It was fun.
How do you like? Have you been to Europe a lot?
So a lot in my younger years. So my dad actually, all of his family's over there. So we would go over for summers for 4 to 6 weeks and spend time over there every summer up until I was about 16. And then I had a long hiatus. So no, I have not spent a lot of time over there as an adult, but as a teenager for sure.
Yeah. That's one of the places my wife and I have not yet ventured into. It's one of those, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. My preconceived notion with Europe is typically more of an exploring, like a doing kind of vacation. You have to, you really want to see it all. You want to take it in all. You want to get it all in. And normally when we book vacations, it's like we want to get away from it all. We want to hit a beach. We want to relax. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say so for sure. Like you're definitely on the go, and especially just, there's so much to see and do. I know there are beaches that you can, certain places you can go if you want the beach, but then it's still really busy and still go is my understanding. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a relaxing vacation, but beautiful and loved it. And just such a good, coming from Victoria or where I am at the lake now in Yubo, and, walking out of your apartment in London, which is a city of, I think, 9 million people. Definitely a different energy. So it's always good to mix things up.
Well, 9 million, that's almost a third of the population of Canada in one city.
Yeah. It's such a reminder, like the world is such a huge place and we're all living in our own little bubbles, and it's good to kind of get out once in a while. Yeah.
And then every time I sit there and I watch, if I ever watch any British television or Ted Lasso, or we just finished watching the Wrexham, the Welcome to Wrexham with Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Yeah. And then all the little communities, I'm just sitting there going, how many communities are there? Do every one of them play high-tier soccer over there?
Apparently, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy, but so fun.
Where's the next adventure you guys are off to?
We're off to, what do we have happening? I'm heading to Greece actually in October, but as a family, we're heading to Mexico for all of December and January.
Wow.
So we've booked off 2 months and we'll be down there for months over the winter.
Now, and I know we're going to get to the kind of the story and the backstory about that, but at the moment, you're kind of living life. You're on your terms, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's just sort of another extension of it, right? Being able to do things remotely is awesome. So you can kind of carry on whatever you're doing, wherever you are in the world, and yeah.
All right. So for perspective for everybody, when I say lake house, what lake are you on Vancouver Island, and where do you live when you're not on at the lake?
Yeah. So I live in Victoria, in Oak Bay, and when we're at the lake, we're in Yubo, which is a very small community just outside of the town of Lake Cowichan, on Cowichan Lake. So it's confusing. The town is called Lake Cowichan. The lake is called Cowichan Lake, but it's about an hour and 45 minutes. From Victoria. Yeah. So it's pretty quick to get up here.
Okay. So, and all the people that live on Vancouver Island and live in the lake country and stuff like that, I imagine the running joke is it's terrible over here. Don't come here. It's horrible. Stay away. Never come over here. Island life is horrible, right?
Yeah, it is very much. Yeah, you don't want to come here, but really you do want to come here. It is a beautiful place. It's it's a beautiful spot for sure.
Yeah. Anytime my wife and I have ever had a chance to go over to the island, it's just like you come back a different person in many respects, refreshed, rejuvenated. It's got hustle and bustle. It's got traffic. It's got those things, but it's a different pace. It truly is.
It's definitely a different pace. I mean, I moved over here in 2006 I grew up in North Delta. And I was living in Whistler before we moved over here. But I've been in Vancouver for a lot of years. And, people would be like, it's a rush. We got to get this done. And, you're come to the island and it's like a rush. Vancouver might mean like next day, same day, like it's got to get done. Over here. It's like, oh, next week is fine. Yeah. Like it's a very different lifestyle for sure.
Yeah.
Which is why we love it.
And that I just made a trip back to the prairies to see mom and dad. I view it very similar. It's like you're sitting out there and you can actually sit and then enjoy a cup of coffee while watching the wind blow through the trees.
100%. Yeah.
Well, I imagine most people didn't come here to listen to us talk about the weather and traveling to Europe, but these are all very important conversations. And one of the things I like to do in my channel is to bring people on who are just crushing it, bring people on who are doing amazing things, but bring people on who maybe aren't, and don't take this the wrong way, a little bit more under the radar than most people. Like you see a lot of people out there on social media and going on 10,000 different podcasts and really making a big giant name for themselves, which is wonderful and it's good. I like to talk to people that are just a little bit below the radar, that are just crushing it, but they're living it on their terms and they don't want to go on the social media as much at the moment. And I would consider you're part of that camp a little bit, but you're starting to get your influence up there quite a bit there, my dear.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd closed down social media accounts for like the last 10 years, like literally. And what started happening, so I had no Facebook, I had no Instagram, I had nothing. And last summer, as I was having a lot more conversations, doing more things, having more conversations with, investors and people, and it's like, oh, well, what's your IG handle? It's like, oh, I don't have that. I don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. And so, and these are people like, even like a lot of people like way older than I am. Not just sort of the younger, quote unquote, generation. And I'm like, okay, I think it's time that I need to I need to have a little bit of an online presence, just, because that's the world we live in, right? A digital world. People, want to look up who you are, what you're doing. So, slowly getting into that space.
Yeah. And we'll get into it more, maybe towards the end of the conversation a bit more, but I was just kind of, as I was preparing and getting in the right mind space, and you and I know each other fairly well over the past couple of years. We've spent a lot of time going back with calls and stuff like that. And you help me, I help you. It's very symbiotic. But I was just going through some of your Instagram and your just Facebook and stuff like that, and it's on point. It's really good. It's actually going, I need to step my game back up again here. I'm taking a little bit of a hiatus. It's some days it's just like I don't want to look at another freaking tweet or a post or something like that. But I just wanted to say your stuff is on point at the moment.
Oh, thanks, Russell. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I think it's like important to take a break when you feel like you need to take a break. And I find it challenging too, just even all the different places where we're connecting, like in the world we live in now. So whether, someone's sending you a message on, you've got texts, you've got email, you've got phone calls, you've got, multiple email addresses, you've got Facebook, Instagram, and trying to keep track of all these different channels where you might be having conversations with people. I'm hoping someone's actually going to invent something where it's like a distribution where they collect all your, you can plug in all your different, phone numbers and email addresses and places people can communicate and just send it to one place. Like, wouldn't that be easy?
Oh, sounds like a good business idea.
Right?
Well, so with that backdrop, maybe let's take a little step back here in time here and share a little bit of context about, because there's a deep story here, guys. And we can go back as far as you want to go back, but I think there's some really good message here. Not only what you're doing now, but I think maybe back to the start of your real estate journey back in the day. Maybe if you can fill in the gaps for all of us, and where did all this journey begin for you?
Gosh, how far back do we want to go? But
well, we can go back as far as you like.
Yeah. So I didn't necessarily grow up around real estate. My parents owned, one or two rental properties. They had purchased a large piece of land with an old house on it. They had built a home. They had, subdivided the lot and built the home they live in now. So they'd done a few things, nothing crazy, but a few things, maybe more than sort of the average person. And so I kind of grew up around that. And I think that's kind of where the real estate interest sort of came from. But I bought my first condo when I was 20 years old. And so just always knew I wanted to own real estate. I bought it. It was a foreclosure with a $5,000 down payment. It was $105,000 in Walnut Grove, out in Langley, newer building. And so that was kind of my first purchase. And from there, bought a property in North Delta. It was a piece of land that could be subdivided. And so bought that, didn't end up subdividing it, but was able to kind of take the equity out of that to buy a property on Vancouver Island where we wanted to move. So we moved to the island in 2006. We wanted to be on acreage. So we bought a property out in Souk and renovated that. And then that's where we started our family. And we sold that and moved to a bigger acreage and a property that we were going to renovate. And so that was kind of the start of the few little things that I'd kind of done, I guess you could say, back in the day.
So you were, maybe by your own words, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. You were dabbling about 20 years ago. You were just kind of dipping your toe in. However, a couple of the strategies you're talking about, those are not dabbling strategies. Those are fairly intensive, advanced strategies in many cases.
Yeah, it felt like dabbling. And I think too, like my background also is as a real estate appraiser. So for context, I started appraising, back in, was it 2001, 2002, something like that. So it's been over 20 years. And so seeing all of that, that kind of stuff happening in that space, right? You're doing appraisals for people that are refinancing. They're buying multiple properties. They're investors. They're, buying pre-construction condos. They're, renovating properties or building homes. So seeing all of that, like I was around that and I could see that was a path to, building wealth, right? But wasn't quite sure, it just kind of winging it.
Yeah. So what got you into the appraisal side of things? Was it something that just was of an interest to you, or just something that you seen from the family? Like what was kind of the spark that got you into that side of the business?
So random, Russell. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer.
It's like most things in life. It just
random, yeah. Totally random.
It's what happens while you're busy making other plans, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I thought I wanted to be a lawyer for no reason at all other than, making money, right? It was like, watching TV as a teenager. It's like, that's what you do if you want to make money. But I also didn't have the grades for it. Like I wasn't, book smart, quote unquote. I wasn't, didn't have the grades to just roll into university. So I thought, and I also thought, do I want to do this? Do I want to be in school for that long? So I ended up taking a course at the local college for legal secretary. And I thought that could be a way to kind of get into the legal world and see what it's all about. And so through that course, I ended up getting on through a connection of my dad's. Actually, a friend of his worked at a law firm, was a partner there at a really big law firm in Vancouver, and got me in for my practicum. And I actually ended up working there as a paralegal. So I kind of bypassed the whole legal secretary thing because I realized very quickly with my no experience that was not going to be for me. And so his friend, who was the head of mortgage enforcement, so basically foreclosures, had said, I'll give you a week trial and you can come in and if not, you're gone. And if you're good, we'll keep you. And so I started working with him and we had a great relationship and I worked there for, maybe 2-3 years. Realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. Also realized I was kind of at the top of what I could do in terms of the legal space if I didn't want to be a lawyer. And so I started taking courses through UBC's real estate division. And one of the courses was an appraisal course. I was working on my diploma in urban land economics only because I was interested in real estate. And anyway, so I started taking that course and we needed to complete a project, get information on the MLS and, software and things like that. So I, of course, working as a paralegal doing foreclosure work, we used appraisers all the time. So I called up the Vancouver firm of appraisers that we used and said, hey, I'm taking this course. I need some help with this project I'm working on. Can I come by your office and use your computers? And this is back in, 2001.
Yeah.
And they said,
just after microfiche, right?
Yes, pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah. You're not wrong.
Sorry for any of you millennials knowing out there, go Google and search up microfiche. You'll get a chuckle.
I mean, computers had only really been around for five years or so. Like, this was relatively new stuff, right? They're mainstream computers. Anyways, so they said, before they said yes, they said, "What do you mean you're taking this course? When can you start working?" And I had, "What do you mean, when can I start working? I have no idea what you're talking about." They're like, "Well, when do you want to be an appraiser? We'll hire you." And so never even considered that. So I met up with them, got some information on what that might look like, what is a day in the life of an appraiser, what that entails. And thought, okay, well, this might be the next step for me. I'm kind of wrapping up with this legal stuff. I mean, it was great and I loved it, but couldn't really go any further with it. And so gave 2 months notice and became an appraiser.
Oh, you truly did just back into it, didn't you?
Totally. So pretty random, yeah.
Yeah, and that was 20 some odd years ago. And there's a really cool story that we'll thread through because there was a big event that just happened within your appraisal business just recently. So you started as an appraiser. When did you form your own business?
So that wasn't until, maybe 8 years. So 2016. So okay. It wasn't until 2016 that I ended up purchasing an appraisal company.
Yep.
From someone else.
And we'll just tie the ends together in that. So what just happened this past year? You had an event within your appraisal business. I
did, yeah. So in, I guess it was, April 30th was the closing date, but I, sold. So I owned and managed 3 real estate appraisal firms on Vancouver Island. And I just sold that group of companies. So yeah, big change.
So within 20 some years, give or take, you backed into something, made a career out of it, turned it into a business of the things, and then you just now exited out for a nice little payday at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're officially retired, aren't you?
I am officially retired, but not retired.
No, yeah. In I'm using the loose air quotes here. Retired from that business ownership of that business, because you've got a lot of other irons in the fire now too, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's awesome. Okay, so let's take a step back within the real estate journey again. So you got you got a few places. You had a condo. You were doing some severance and subdivisions. You were buying some places around. What was the next phase that you kind of jumped into within the context of real estate?
Yeah, so we had a young family. We were living out on an acreage in Souk, and we had we had plans to turn we bought a 1,700 square foot 70s rancher in original condition. So with the, orange shag carpet and everything, we had bought that with plans to fully renovate it and increase the size of it for our family. So we, had all the plans done up, and we ended up building, I think at the end of it, it was about 4,200 square feet. So it went from 1,700, one level, to 3 levels and 4,200 square feet. So we sort of embarked on that renovation project. My husband was a finishing carpenter. So, the plan was that he would, do a lot of the work on that project. And we started on that path, got finished, mostly finished, with the exception of the basement, which we were leaving unfinished. And through that process, and it was an interesting property. It was a beautiful piece of property backed onto a creek. It also had a salmon bearing stream running through it from the road to the back of the creek. And it was gorgeous. So we had to go through all the riparian stuff to be able to, with where we could build and all of that to get the plans. And one of the things we didn't do, Russell, was we didn't properly budget on that project. And we had an issue with our septic contractor. So we'd hired a septic contractor because, of course, when you're renovating and adding a lot of square footage to a property that's on septic, you've got to consider upgrading your septic system, right? So they look at how many bedrooms, the house could have, the size of it, that type of thing. I can't remember all the details now, but you definitely have to upgrade your septic. And so we'd kind of gone through that process, not knowing we had hired, kind of a bogus contractor on the septic piece. And that it was going to cost us, because of these riparian issues and the failing septic. And, really we shouldn't have even been building what we were building on that property. It was going to cost, another something like $100,000 to sort out this septic mess that we had gotten ourselves into, and we didn't know enough to do that research. We'd gone over budget on what we thought it was going to cost us on that property, and it was, I guess that would have been around 2011. So we were way into this property for way more than the property was worth. So that was kind of that was sort of, I guess you could say, where things kind of derailed in the early part of our real estate investing journey.
Wow. I usually say when it comes down to having to deal with septic problems and septic fields, that's a pretty shitty situation. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You got to throw that in there.
Yes. Sorry. I guess I should throw a little, there we go. We'll put that in there as well. Okay. So, and I'm not going to leave it there. So how did you get out of that? So it was starting to get to be a smelly situation, and you were into it for more than it was worth. And do you just keep digging the hole, or what did you do?
No. So we had line of credits that we'd used for the renovations, not anticipating, that it was going to be, more than we could really handle. Right. And we'd done a loose budget. We didn't, vet the costs properly, or the scope of the project. We also really underestimated, the toll that it was going to take on our family, Russell, in terms of having young kids, both of us working full time, my husband leading the renovations in his, downtime, right? So evenings, weekends, which then meant no family time. Like, it was just a whole situation. And so we now had this property where we were feeling the pinch of these payments that we had to make. We hadn't finished the renovation. We had $100,000 bill coming up that we did not have funds to pay, and there were no funds to borrow to get that sorted so we could close up our building permit. And we were under a lot of stress, right? We're really under a lot of stress, personally and financially. And so I sought advice. So through my legal background, I sought advice from my old boss, who was a foreclosure lawyer. At this point, we were making all our payments. So, we're still making all our payments. Nothing was, late or anything like that. But we could see the writing on the wall that, and I can't remember the exact numbers because, we're going back on the memory banks here, but we were something to the tune of about $300,000. The property was worth $300,000 less than what our bills were, related to this renovation. And so I called him up and I just sort of said, hey, here's the situation. I don't know that we are making the payments now. I don't know that we're gonna be able to keep making these payments, or for how long, or what's that going to look like. And it's causing some stress. And, what do you think we should do? And his advice to me, as a foreclosure lawyer, seeing this kind of stuff every day, he said, Christine, you're young. He goes, pull the pin. He goes, do not pull the pin. Like, if this is something that is causing you stress and you don't think you're going to be able to, wait for the market to appreciate and, deal with the septic and get the funds, he goes, just pull the pin, just walk away. Like, you're going to be able to rebuild. And that was advice from someone who is, that has always been a mentor, and super knowledgeable in the field. And I sort of thought, okay, that's one perspective, right? Like, is that what we're going to do? And in the end, that is what we decided to do, Russell. We decided to move out. We left everything in great condition. We kept making the payments until the day we moved out, because we felt a lot of shame around it, right? Like, we felt a lot of shame around the situation we found ourselves in. There was never any ill intent, but we just, we didn't know what we were doing, right? And got in over our heads. And so we felt a lot of shame around it. We decided, we don't want to be in a situation where we're living somewhere and not making the payments. Let's make the best of it. Let's keep making the payments till we move out, leave the place in the best shape we can, and start over. So we basically left the property and moved into a rental into Victoria, and decided to just, do that. And through that process, because obviously that's one part of it, right? But through that process of cleaning up that mess, we decided to actually file for a consumer proposal. Basically we worked with a company called Four Pillars, and we had a great connection there through like a friend of ours. And we met with him and just said, hey, here's a situation. What do we do? And he'd actually, interestingly enough, was also, I wasn't calling myself a real estate investor at this point. This was our personal primary residence. But he had been a real estate investor in Alberta and had gone through the market, in 06, 07, 08, 09, and had gone through that process himself with a bunch of investment properties and personal properties. And so he goes, I know exactly what you're dealing with. I've gone through the same thing. And he'd sort of dedicated himself to helping people in that situation. So we ended up filing a consumer proposal. And so what that meant was any debts that we had kind of all got compiled, and they made an arrangement, with the creditors to pay a portion, like where we would have to pay back a portion of that, because at that point my net worth is negative $300,000, right? Like there's nothing to lose, right? And so we made that arrangement and ended up, I think it was something like you file it in one day and we got a loan to pay out that consumer proposal. And so then we just paid that loan off within a year and started rebuilding our credit on day one. And, very quickly we're able to kind of get it on the other side.
Oh, wow. Well, so a couple things. There's a lot to unpack there, but I don't want to gloss over. Thank you for sharing that. I imagine that was a challenging time, and I imagine now that you're on the over on the other side, you can talk objectively about it. But probably when you were in it, it was very stressful, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And it's not something that I necessarily talked about for a long. I mean, it's not something you go around advertising, but
yeah.
Now being in the real estate investing space, and certainly the time and market where we are now, I've been having a lot of conversations with real estate investors, that are in challenging times. And, I do find that like sharing your story so that people can see that, hey, you might be in, an unpleasant situation right now, but it doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be forever. And you can come out on the other side and continue on. So.
Well, and I would imagine it had a lot to do also with, was going to be your dream home that turned into a nightmare all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing is I have conversations like this with people all the time, and not to say this is right or wrong, but there's a little bit of some people are going through challenging times, and there's a little bit of shame blowing, the flame blower. There's a lot of shaming going on of people that are running into some hard times. Now, I totally get it if people were fraudulent and people were ill intent and were really bad people. I get that.
100%.
But I have conversations with people all the time that are in sticky situations. And one of the options legitimately to look at would be to let the property go, let the bank take it back, clean it off and go on. And a lot of people sit there and go, well, what about this person's podcast? And they were talking about all these business failures and stuff like that. I don't want to be one of those stories and stuff like that. So there's a lot of shame around it at the same time. And I would imagine there's the tactical side of the steps, and then there's also the emotional side of the steps as well.
Yeah, and I think there also comes down to logic too, right? Like, I use the word tactical, but for me, it's logical and logic and reason, right? Like in our situation, it was our own primary residence, so we weren't in a situation where we're dealing with investor money or any partners or anything like that, which is a whole different conversation. But when I called up my old boss, who was a lawyer in the foreclosure space, and they said we're negative $300,000, like. We can't borrow money. We don't have enough income now to support our family in the way we need to, because we've got these payments. Now we've got this bill for $100,000 to deal with our septic. And, and he goes, well, there's no other option. Like, what are you going to do? Kill yourself to try to make up this $300,000? Like, and there's only so many hours in a day. It's just not possible. And, hearing that from someone who's a professional, right, in that space, and kind of going, okay, like, yeah, this wasn't something that was gone into with ill intention, or, things happen, things don't always go according to plan. And to sort of know that you're at this point, your net worth is negative 300, what do you have to lose, right? There's nothing to lose, right? I mean, you can rebuild your credit, you can, start from day one, getting things going again. So for us, it just kind of came down to logic and reason, right? Was it pleasant? No, of course not. But the alternative of, I just don't know what the alternative would have been, truly.
Well, I think the alternative would be, which some people do, and not, it's for a conversation another day, is they gloss over it, they shove it down, and they just say, la, 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 everything is wonderful. And then they just limp along and struggle along. And a year turns into 3 and turns into 5, turns into 10, turns into 15, and everything gets burnt down. And your marriage suffers, everything suffers all at the same time. Mm-hmm. Wow. So what were some of the first steps in that process? I know, small family. Simon was probably doing the work on the home, but he was probably having to take other jobs in order to just keep the payment going. And you were doing probably your appraisal work. Well, did you have your own business at this time, or was this you were just working for somebody else?
No. So while all this is kind of going on in the background, I had been approached by someone actually to buy an appraisal business and to partner with them. And I knew that this was going on for me and was not the right time to enter into a partnership with someone else while I was dealing with my own, personal things related to finances. So I sort of said, now's not a good time. I'm not going to look at this right now. So I kind of actually turned down an opportunity to buy a business. And we ended up moving into Victoria. And I actually ended up taking a break from appraisal. And so I'd always wanted to kind of just see what else was out there. Victoria, this is obviously before things were all online, but it can feel kind of small, like it's not a big place. So I ended up getting a job as a sales manager, opening up an in-house sales department for a high-end real estate developer in Victoria. And so I kind of opened that up for them, did that for a couple of years, and eventually became the director of sales and marketing before I went back to appraising. But it was just really starting at ground zero, like in terms of, rebuilding. It was like, okay, we're renting a place. I've never rented a place since I was 19 years old. So even just that felt like, like you're going backwards, right? And our focus was to pay off that loan, pay back the funds we owed as soon as possible. So that was really where we kind of started to kind of get back to, a net worth of zero, and start rebuilding.
Wow. So I would imagine, there would have been some challenging times around there because you had some identity wrapped around as a real estate professional. And, I'm not saying this is what I would say, but you should have known better, Christine, right? Mm-hmm. So I imagine that's the talk you were having with yourself.
Yeah, truly, right? And I think it was just a case of like, we didn't know what we didn't know. Yes, the septic issue is one part, but yes, we did go over budget, and we didn't fully vet every single quote, right? That we got in. It was just sort of like, oh, here's a ballpark, and here's this, and we didn't have the contingencies built in. So yeah, there definitely were some things, looking back and doing that self-reflection of like, we should have known better, right? We should have done more due diligence. We should have paid closer attention to what was coming in. And I think, I've seen it so often on the appraisal side too, right? Where renovations gone. This is post that, because that was still early in my career, but, where people do renovations and, they're like, oh, I spent, $300,000 on these renovations. My place must be worth an extra $400,000 now, right? And, the cost doesn't always equal the value, right? So just because you put X amount into a property doesn't mean that it's going to have gone up, by that amount at all. So there's a lot of, I would say the due diligence. Someone actually referred to me the other day as the due diligence queen. I'm now in the mindset of like leaving no stone unturned, right? Before moving ahead on something.
Yeah. So these, you've taken something that was a fairly dark situation and turned it into one of your superpowers, if you will. Mm-hmm. Full on cape, tights, boots, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You don't go through something like that and not kind of come out and sort of go, okay, where are we, what do we need to dial in here?
Yep. Well, we'll pivot off this conversation for a second, but I have a feeling, there's going to be some people that are watching and listening to this that may be in a similar situation, that they're in a dilly of a pickle, very similar to like you just described. Maybe if you were having coffee with somebody, or you're just sitting there just having a kneecap to kneecap conversation, and somebody was sharing you a similar situation to what you just shared with myself, what advice, what first steps would you get that person to do to help them move forward?
Gosh, so timely, Russell, because I've had this conversation actually with a couple people in the last month or two. I would say, first I would say I see you and I hear you and I feel you. And I know that what you're going through right now isn't easy. And, you're not the first person you're not the only person on the planet right now who's going through this, and you're not the first and you're not the last. And I would just say that you've got options, right? They might not seem like viable options that you're really excited about, but you do have options. And that regardless of what happens, you will get through to the other side. And your life can change so quickly, right? Just because you're in this today doesn't mean you're going to be, if you deal with it now, you can move past it faster, right? I think it's one of those things, the longer that you wait, knowing that, I think a lot of people wait too long, Russell. They wait because they think things are going to get better, right? And by better, that, there's no necessarily solution, but they think things are going to get better or it's going to turn around somehow. And that can happen, but I think there's also a lot relief comes when you kind of rip off the Band-Aid and accept where you are today and figure out a plan to move forward.
Did you have any concern about what other people would thought? Or that's what I think holds back. I think that's what holds people back a lot.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, it's not like something, I don't even know that all of my friends know about this, that it even happened. I mean, we didn't go around saying this is when I was like, oh yeah, we're moving into the city.
It's not one of those things you want to go down and do a parade with and advertise to everybody you talk and just bleed all over the place, if you will.
No, it was like, oh no, we want to move into the city to be closer. We're not telling everyone that we can't make the payments on our house and our renovations didn't go as planned. And you know what I mean? Like that wasn't the conversation. I mean, maybe a handful of our closest friends knew what was going on, but that was definitely not something that was advertised. Because I think when you're in it, it's so hard it's so vulnerable, right? There's so much security and safety tied up in finances, so much, just shame around it, right? And especially, like you said, as being, a real estate appraiser, and having something like that happen, it's just like, just sort of seemed, not something that you wanted to talk about. But I think the more that we share, experiences and challenges that we've gone through, I think that can help everyone, right? Because it doesn't have to be forever, right? And just because something happens, I think there's a thing like how many businesses, if you look at it from a business perspective, how many businesses do people on average start that don't necessarily take off, right? It's not like everything is going to be a home run, right? But it's like what you do with the information that you and the like the lessons you've learned from that experience. It's what you do with that information, which is going to determine, I think, where you go with it.
And I would imagine most people, if not everybody listening to this, or most people you talk to about this now, after this of doing the work and getting through this, imagine most people's response is, wow, what a crazy story. That is so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. That's like, you almost serve to be, in your mess became your message.
Yeah, I would say so. And I mean, this is going back probably 11, 12 years ago now. Like it's been a while. But yeah, just knowing, I mean, I can think of a couple of friends that I've referred to, the company that we worked with. I can think of a couple of people I've had this conversation with in the last couple of months, right? Like, I think people just keep this under wraps. And when they hear that someone's actually gone through something, it's like, oh my gosh, like you've gone through that and now you're still able to do this and have a business and you're, in real estate and you're investing and you've got a late. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, it's all possible and available, right? Like it doesn't feel like that when you're in that moment. But knowing that it is possible on the other side.
Yeah. I just had lunch with a friend of mine who I've known for a while, and he's now in his late 60s. And he declared bankruptcy on his 50th birthday, a business catastrophic failure of something that done. And you would be shocked at the size of real estate portfolio he owns now, and that he lives off of the cash flow from his real estate portfolio. Now he's divesting of a few, paying a whole bunch off. He'll have 18 or 20 free and clear places by the end of this year. And that happened within, let's call it within a 20-year time frame.
Yeah.
And it can happen, no matter if you're still young and you got lots of runway, or you're old like us and the runway is getting a little shorter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Well, but then we haven't pivoted into what's transpired after this. So you kind of had that mess, you kind of cleaned it up, you started at ground zero, got back to work, started working for somebody else. You just started slowly chipping away. When did you start thinking about diving back into the real estate game? Because I would imagine you would have been a little, not sour, but you would have been a little hesitant about jumping in again.
Well, I don't know that I was hesitant, other than the fact that like I didn't have any funds. I think that was really where it was like, okay, well, we're going to be renting, we're start saving some money, kind of thing. And of course, because it was, I was selling high-end real estate, right? So at the time, $7-8 million plus condos, in Victoria. So you're showing people beautiful real estate, you're selling the beautiful real estate and it's like, okay, I'm over here in my rental. How can I get there? Right. And so truly so I loved working with this company, selling hand real estate, but the work weeks, it was all weekends, evenings, the hours required and expectations were just crazy. So it was, 60, 70-hour work weeks, always on call. Wasn't jiving with my young family. And so I decided this isn't working. And I'm going to call up the company. So you'll recall that a company had asked if I wanted to buy into their company on the appraisal side while I was kind of going through this. And I had said no. And I'd sort of been following them and had sort of seen didn't look like they'd sold their business to anyone. So I decided to call them and find out if they were still interested in selling. So I called them up when I knew that I was wrapped up with this other job. And they said, yes, we are still interested. And I said, okay, well, if you want to do it, I'm in. And so that's sort of how I got back into appraising. So bought a business with a partner. So the owner was retiring and her daughter wanted to find a business partner to buy the business with. So her and I bought the business from her mom. So I got back into appraising. And within about a year, that partnership, wasn't jiving. And so, we had the conversation. It was like, it was your mom's company. If you want to keep it, you can buy me out. If you want me to take it, I'll take it over. You decide. And so she decided that she didn't want to be a business owner. So she wanted me to buy her out. So, within 18 months of buying a company with a partner, I had the company on my own. And so I started diving into the financials of the company. And so the company was also bought. I bought the company on creative finance, which I didn't really know what that was at the time. Because again, I have those funds. So when someone said, do you want to buy the company? It's like, well, I don't have any money. I don't know how that can work. It's like, oh, don't worry about it. You don't need any money.
Did you? So you bought it on some terms, I would imagine.
On some terms.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like a payment plan over time to build larger equity. Okay, got it. Okay.
Exactly. So it was a 5-year buyout and there was enough funds within the company. So the purchase price, that was taking care of itself coming out of the profits of the company. And then there was also enough money to pay both of us a really good salary. So then I was paying out my business partner basically what she would have been making, again, over terms. I can't remember if it was a year or 18 months or something of what she would have been making on the buyout. So I'm paying her out. And as I'm kind of getting into the books, because she'd sort of been handling all the accounting pieces, I realized that if we restructured payables slightly to be in line with market, there was a lot of money sitting in this company, like truly. And so I messaged all of our contractors and just said, we're making some tweaks to, our payables to be in line with market, which it was. And I gave them lots of notice and no one balked. It was like, okay, great. Thanks for letting us know. And by making that shift, I was able to pull out about $150,000 of capital from the business to use as a down payment. So that's how we ended up buying our lake house.
Right.
So the lake house was kind of, well, actually, I've got to back up. I remember because we actually did buy an office space too. My partner and I for our office. We actually did buy a foreclosure office space with funds from the company purchase. And then I bought her out of that. So I had the office space. And by restructuring the payables, I was able to have funds for down payment on our lake house. So we actually ended up buying our lake house before we bought our primary residence.
Wow. So you bought into the business at the beginning without your own money. You had you had good terms. When you bought your partner out, did you have the capital to eventually buy the partner out, or did you negotiate new terms with that person?
No, so the existing terms were still going.
Yeah.
And then when I bought the partner out, it was just terms between her and I on the buyout. And again, no funds of my own it was just funds that were available in the company, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the company was generating enough revenue to handle both of these buyouts.
Yeah. So you creatively bought in to the partnership and you creatively bought your partner out. And when did that buyout officially kind of come to conclusion?
I think it was in 2018.
Okay.
It wasn't a very long well, the original buyout was a 5-year.
Yeah.
And then the second partner buyout was short. I think it was 18 months.
Right.
Ish.
And then, so 2018, and then 6 years later, you eventually just this year sold that business onwards for, for a nice payday on something that you negotiated terms you negotiated terms on the buyout, and then you eventually sold it. And did you sell it for cash, or did you have to sell it on terms?
No, I sold it for cash. So, and I had two other appraisal businesses too that I purchased, since the first one, on terms as well, where people had reached out to me saying, "Hey, I've got this business. I need someone to come in and I'm done. Do you want to buy it?" And so I was able to buy those on creative finance too. And then sold the group of three companies as a package. And one of the things that I sort of said to myself is I don't want to do it on terms. I want, all the funds up front. And that was just kind of one of the things that I had, in my mind of how I wanted the transaction to go. And when I was kind of scripting and working on how this is going to pan out this spring, and ended up with a couple offers, and it wasn't an issue to have the funds paid out up front. So the person who ended up buying it ended up getting a business loan through, I think, BDC.
So you ended up just rolling in other smaller people that maybe wanted to retire their businesses. So you bought their book of business and you slowly built up a bigger book of business, and you had to and you just plugged them into your systems, I would imagine. And then at the end, you turned around, made a nice payday just upon running your business, in essence.
Yeah. And I think it was something that those companies that had come to me to purchase them had failed to plan, right? They hadn't planned their exits. So those owners of those companies were in their 60s, mid 60s and beyond, and hadn't taken the time to plan, their business exits, right? To actually make them worth something to someone else, because they were very intertwined in those businesses. Whereas what I had created was, businesses that were running passively without me, right? With systems and processes and a team in place. So that there was some value in that for a new owner, right? They weren't just buying themselves a job.
And all that time you were doing all that, you still, raising, how many children do you have again?
Two.
You were raising two wonderful children, playing high level sports, attending all their games, attending all this kind of stuff. You still had to be super mom, and at sometimes our biggest children are sometimes our husbands at the same time.
Yeah, no, so much fun. And having the businesses really allows for that, right? Allows for the family life balance, for sure.
Yeah. So you really subscribe to the old, I love the quote Robert Kiyosaki said, build businesses, invest in real estate. So along the way, you bought a place, you bought an office space. When did you bought your lake house? When did you eventually get into your new principal residence? And let's fill in some of the gap on some of the real estate plays you've done over the last, say, 6 to 8 years.
Yeah. So bought the office space with the partner, and then bought the partner out. So had that, bought the lake house, which was a 25-year dream. And there's a very cool, which you don't need to get into, but a very cool manifestation story on that, on how that all came to be. And then, so the lake house was a private sale, and we got an awesome deal on it. Our realtor, and his long story short, basically it was a private sale. He'd see the sign. And it was like, okay, if this is the price, we have got to buy it like today. And so got a great deal on our lake house. And then the value of the lake house just had gone up. So because we got it for such a good deal, it had gone up enough, even pre-COVID, that we were able to pull out equity, in the span of, like a year and a half, pull out, 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, to put as a down payment on our primary residence. So a property had come up in our neighborhood where we were renting. So we'd moved to a different rental in our preferred neighborhood, and a house had come up. And it's an older neighborhood where a lot of the houses are small, and we wanted sort of a 2-story with basement. And a property had come up, and an investor had bought it in 2018. And it was a doctor, and she thought she could just put renters in there. It'd be really easy. And anyways, it didn't pan out. And she ended up selling it at a loss to us in, I guess, it was a year and a half later that she ended up selling the property. So we bought our primary residence after the lake house. And I've done a bunch of stuff since. So
yeah, well, when you say a bunch of stuff, we're about to get into the bunch of stuff. It'll make a few people blush what you've done. So when did you decide that you were going to kind of dive back into the investment side of real estate in a bigger way?
Yes, I think that was always on the table. It was always kind of the bigger plan, Russell. And I think it was, obviously being in the owning multiple businesses, being an appraiser, seeing what everyone else was doing. It was like, okay, this is the path forward. Like, this is what I want to be doing. I could see it's possible. But I think it was just, I was in that mode of, raising kids, being really present for my family, which is my number one priority, running a business, being in a relationship. Like, there's so many things happening, and it just sort of felt like the timing needed to be right for me to dive into it in a bigger way. And I knew that I wanted to get mentorship as well. Like, I knew that in order to be successful and to start on the path that I wanted to start on, that mentorship was going to be a big part of that. So it wasn't until, I guess, probably March of 2022. So we're talking about 2.5 years ago, where, the market had peaked in BC anyway, BC and Ontario anyways, market had peaked sort of in that March of 2022. As you can imagine, real estate appraisal is really tied to the real estate market, right? So you've always got orders coming in, you always have people refinancing and sales happening. But when the market's on fire, as an appraiser, you're on fire too. And so it was a really busy time through COVID and up until the peak. And when things, basically, I'm going to say ground to a halt, which is pretty much what happened, or back to kind of normal. It was like, okay, this seems like the opening that I've been waiting for. Like, my business is running, mostly positively. I've got an amazing team. I think I've got some time to kind of shift into, looking at what I want to do. So I had hired a life and business coach, started working with her that spring. And that kind of led me to join another group, another mastermind group in September. And through that work, that kind of led me to, okay, it's December of 2022. You want to shift into real estate investing in a bigger way. You need a mentor. Who's that going to be? So I'd started researching, different people in the real estate investing space. And I knew that Edmonton was a market I'd always kind of had my eye on. And so I started researching people who were kind of doing what I wanted to be doing. And that's how, you and I connected. I just sort of made that decision that, okay, it's happening.
Right. Yeah. We started working, I think it was January of 2023, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
yeah. So the research was happening in December 2022. And then, we started working together in January 2023.
The rise that you've had since then is just stratospheric. And I sit there and I go, as a good coach, sometimes you have to understand when it's time to let them run. Or, whoa, let's time out, let's regroup, let's clean a few things up and move. With you, it was a lot of, holy moly, the horsepower that you were going to put behind this was quite staggering. I've said, I was more of a sounding board and a more of a, let's giddy up, let's go type of thing. So what have you done in the last couple of years since that, within the context of real estate? You decided Edmonton was kind of your thing. You've got known on the island within a few communities as the person who invests in Edmonton. What kind of steps did you start taking?
Yeah, so I'd say, definitely, we started working together to kind of get that knowledge base of, bouncing ideas around and what path might make the most sense, and really to get some clarity. I find there's so much noise, and it can be really challenging to move forward when, you've got a bit of an ADHD brain and, everything looks exciting and, there's so many different paths that you can take to get to the same end goal. So really kind of honing in on that and getting clear on, the vision and the why and, the path to get there and building a team, being out of province, building the team is super important. And so, just started to, dive in and, so it's been awesome. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is a huge difference, being on the island versus doing stuff in Edmonton. Doing business in Alberta is a dream, like compared to what, like doing business. It's so different. Like I feel like if you haven't experienced it, you may not understand it, but, some of the things that are happening in Edmonton and some of the projects and things like that, like if you were to say that to someone on the island, they would just laugh in your face. And people that I've told that to and builders and stuff here are kind of like, oh yeah, there's no way we would ever do that. So doing business in Edmonton has been a dream, amazing people to work with there. And it's just been a lot of fun to put together and through, jumping into the mentorship. A lot of things have happened that that you couldn't have predicted. Like, one thing starts and it kind of builds onto something else. So there's been real estate that I've been purchasing, but there's also been so many other things along the way. So I've started a community for women who want to have conversations about building wealth. And, so many great relationships have come out of that. And just a really, really fun community to be a part of, and to, just realizing there's so many women that, are on the verge of investing in real estate and want to be investing in real estate, but, don't necessarily have a baseline of where to start, and don't necessarily have the time. A lot of them are busy entrepreneurs and professionals and are already, raising families, having busy and successful careers, don't necessarily have the time to jump into mentorship like I did. But they need some baseline of knowledge and education to even feel comfortable investing passively, for example. So, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And, I'm just going to backtrack on a couple things you said there too. It is once you start investing in Alberta, it is a little bit of a breath of fresh air. Even though there are challenges, but it's I'll give two examples of just two conversations I just had with some people. I was telling somebody of a project I was doing, and we're coming up on, say, month 11 from literally of buying house. In month 11, we're going to start placing tenants. And when we're done, we're going to have 6 units, 2 side-by-side suites, garage suites. And a guy told me, he goes, Russ, that usually what it takes me 11 to 12 months just to get a permit to get things done. You're going from start to finish in the same time it takes us just to get a permit. Or the other one was, I was talking with a fellow in Toronto, and I shared some numbers with them of one of our last builds, 7 units, 3 townhome suites, garage suites, 1.815 million. And he said, Russ, he goes, that's my land acquisition cost out here for what you did for your full build. And he goes, after I'm done, I will only have 3, maybe 4 units on it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it is a way to, I think, to accelerate it. And most people in most of these other markets, their only strategy they can really do if they're doing these kind of things is buy it, build it, and then turn around and sell it. But at the same time, I question who's going to buy a $1.5 million starter home. But I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. We're able to buy it, build it, rent it, wait 5, 7, 10 years, and then sell it down the road too. So it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, your funds just go, especially if you're on the West Coast, or most of the markets in Ontario, your funds just go so much further.
Yeah.
And you actually have properties that are cash flowing, right? Whereas I think, here most of the plays, really are appreciation, which is a great, it's not necessarily, I don't really consider it true investing, but if you have the funds, and instead of putting $1,000 a month in your bank account, you're going to put $1,000 a month into a property.
Yep.
That's a strategy we've used for properties in BC. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but yeah, very different strategies work there, which is awesome.
Yeah. Now, I know you glossed over it. Maybe you're being a little bit of a humble Canadian here a bit, but before we pivot into the work you're doing to help women with women entrepreneurs and women real estate investors, what do you have, just for perspective, what do you have your name on projects right now, a number of units that are out there cooking in the marketplace right now?
Yeah, so I've got a couple fun projects in the go. So I've got.
So guys, just make sure you have a pen and paper to keep track of this.
Oh, Russell, come on. I've got a 6 unit that's about to should be completing next month.
Yep.
Which is exciting. I've got another 6 unit that has just started construction, and I've got a 10 unit townhouse project that is also under construction. So that's framing has started there. And then I've got a 94 unit apartment building that is under contract, and we've been working on that project, I guess, since January or so. And we are about to submit for DP on that one. So yeah, I guess that's whatever that is.
What is that? 6 plus 6 plus 10, 22, 22 and 94 is what? 616? 116?
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah, 116.
As you know, I see. I already knew the answer before I asked the question, but still, every time I hear that, I'm very proud of you. I'm very happy for you. And who's to know? You never know. Not everything is 100% finalized, but you are. Well, let's put it the way: the 22 units are done. They're like moving forward. Yeah. The 94 is still in a lot of development stages and diligence stages, and you're applying for financing and stuff like that. It's still, it's not 100% done, but it's done. It's on, your name is on it, right? It's yours. Mm-hmm. It's yours to close on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And we just actually, that one's, it was actually really cool. We had an opportunity so the city came back and wanted a few tweaks to the exterior facade of the building to make it a little bit more modern. And so through that process and some other conversations, we had the opportunity to take a look to see whether or not we'd be able to add some additional parking stalls on that project. And we decided to go ahead and add additional parking stalls. So I'm just waiting for the final tweaks on that before the development permit gets submitted. But yeah, I mean, just it's been so just great to work with an awesome team and be able to, carry out the level of due diligence that's necessary for some of these larger projects. There's a couple other projects that are similar to this one. And, I just sort of find like you're getting 6 units, 10 units, 24 units, 94 units. You've got to take the time to do your due diligence, right? Like I just find a lot of people rush things and, oh, good enough, throw some numbers on a spreadsheet. And yeah, it's nice to have time on your side to really, really go through things.
Yeah. And I'm not going to gloss over this, but I think even just of itself, the story of the 94 unit purchase that you're involved in could be an episode in and of itself of just a deep dive into that alone. Like that could be another hour conversation if we wanted to unpack that. Would that be something you'd be willing to do another episode when maybe as it goes a little further down the road?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to share the process on going through that.
But you're at the point right now? Are you guys raising some capital for that? Are you at the point where you're looking for early adopter investors into that?
Yeah, we are. So we've started to put that out there for investors and start to onboard investors. And we've also got something. So that one, we are doing a capital raise there, and we are also in the process of putting together. It looks like it's going to be a go. But that it's going to have an option to have registered funds invested as well on that one. So that'll be great. So it has been cash only up to this point, but it looks like we're going to be able to bring in some registered funds, and so it's been fun.
Yeah, and even just that alone about the raising of the capital to do these projects is another master series of lessons that we could dive into too, right there. There's a lot of learning that you had over that process too. It's a business within the business, is it not?
Oh yeah. It's its own. It literally is its own business, and there's so much that goes into it and building those relationships. And it's been a lot of learning, and but really good feedback, right? I think just really good feedback on the investors that are coming in. It's a great project. There's millions of equity on the buy to share, just right up front, which is great. And then also, it's a good group of people.
Yeah. And gang, you'll be surprised once you start getting into larger projects. I know they're scary, and the numbers, there's lots of zeros and there's lots of potential risks involved and stuff like that. But you'll be surprised at how many people are there to support and help and guide and consult and all that kind of stuff. And you'll also be surprised. The one thing that blew my mind a little bit is the margins within it. Like there are built-in margins. I'll give you an example. Like if you were buying a $180,000 townhouse and it rented for $1,300, you're probably going to maybe get it for $178,000, and the margins are pretty tight. And you rent it, it's got a couple $100, right? When you start getting into the world of development, there's millions of dollars of built-in equity. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars of budget available for consultants. There's funds available that you can actually pay yourself a wage out of it. There's funds available within the build construction that you can put to the mortgage that you can actually make a living off of it doing this kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, depending on making sure that you have that team set up.
Yeah.
I would say, right, and having a good team that understands how to put these types of deals together. I would say is the biggest thing for sure.
Yeah, and at the same time, when you're walking into the world of commercial and you sit there, go, oh, we got a $27 million loan. Their ears perk up and they go, yeah, that's a little better than the $1.7 million loan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. From all accounts, seems to be easier to finance than a $6.
Nice.
Which seems counterintuitive. But.
Well, I don't want to miss a couple things here. And we're going to pivot here into the work that you're doing to help give back to the community as well. But before we do, what would be the best place for somebody if they do want to get a hold of you? Where would the best place for somebody to reach out?
Yeah, so probably the two best places, Russell. I would say you can find me on Instagram, which is christine.traynor.reinvesting, or you can find me on my website, which is just christinetraynor.com.
Yeah. So you have a very good Instagram that you're working, and it's just your name, christinetraynor.com. Very good website. Simple, to the point, and a good place just to kind of host a lot of the stuff that you're doing. So good. Do you have email that you want to share, or just through website would be the best?
Yeah, you can click on my email through the website there, but I'll share it here too. It's connect@christinetraynor.com.
Good. Awesome. Okay. Okay. So I'm just trying to remember, and I know it was right from the very beginning when we started doing our work together, you had a desire, even though it was a little bit on the back burner side of the work you were going to do, that you were going to start building community to support women on their entrepreneurial journey, on their building wealth through real estate and other businesses. When did that kind of take a life of its own? What was kind of the steps that happened in order for you to give back to that community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of started, I think it really was stemmed from a lot of the conversations that I was having with women who were in my periphery, not necessarily in my inner circle, but, chatting with women about just feeling very in the dark, lack of knowledge and lack of empowerment around building their wealth, whether that's just, paying their bills or moving forward or starting a business or, investing in real estate. Like a lot of women just sort of felt like, yeah, that's not for me. And I really wanted to kind of change the narrative with that because I truly believe through all the knowledge and everything that I've gained that it is for everyone, right? Whether you have funds, whether you don't have funds, whether you have time, whether you don't have time, like there is a path to invest in real estate for everyone. And so I wanted to kind of, just sort of share that information with women and make it a little bit more accessible, right? As opposed to, I think there's a lot of incredible programs out there. There's a lot of incredible communities. And I do think that for a lot of the women that I chat with on a regular basis, that those communities can feel a little bit intimidating, especially if you're someone who's not in the real estate investing space at all. You don't come from a real estate background, right? So, for me, I was coming from a background, of real estate appraisal and being in business. And so it was already something that I was involved in. Whereas I think if you're starting at kind of ground zero, it can feel overwhelming. And so, I guess it sort of started about a year ago when I hosted an event up at the lake, and we went and looked at, that was kind of the kickoff, unofficial kickoff. Had hosted an event at the lake. We went and looked at some real estate. We had an awesome afternoon touring around. And it was just kind of like, okay, this is actually really fun. And women do want to get together and go look at real estate and talk about things and learn together. And from there, I started hosting monthly in-person meetups through the investor platform. And then I wanted to do something online. So I just started hosting weekly calls through a community that I call She Builds Wealth. And it is real estate investing focused, but we also talk about other ways to build wealth, right? So we've had people come in to chat about infinite banking and, lots of different topics and lots of different real estate experts to come chat about, different strategies and things that are happening. And it's been a really fun community to host.
Wow, that's crazy. Like, and guys, no hyperbole here, is when I told you this was going to be a deep, deep story that goes a lot of different direction. I'm not blowing any sunshine here. Okay, so you done most everything. You've built multiple businesses. You've exited a business. You're in the process of building a fairly sizable real estate portfolio all at the same time. You're building a community to support others in the journey. You've now exited your business and taken a little bit of time to just decide what Christine Traynor wants to do when she grows up.
Yeah.
What's next for you? What is the next chapter that you're going to write in your book?
Gosh, I mean, people have been asking that question lately, Russell, and it's like I'm not trying
to put any pressure on you in any way, shape, or form.
Totally,
it's totally okay not to know. But but when you are one of the most intentional manifestors I know. When you set your mind to doing something and you're going to manifest it, it's like, get the heck out of your way. All heaven and earth is going to conspire to make it happen. So I know you're sometimes not hesitant, but you're sitting there when I'm going to put my mind to it, I want to better make sure this is the right thing because it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that is a fair assessment for sure. right now in this minute, because I don't even touch on this, but right now in this minute, I am doing another launch of my course. So I also do have a course to help women get started in real estate investing. So that's happening this month in August. But I'm also, what I'd like to do, if I zoom out and kind of look at the bigger picture of what I'm creating, I've got a big vision, and I'd like to ultimately, start a large real estate investing firm and to invest in multifamily property. So that's ultimately what I'd like to create. I'm not there yet, but I'm sort of paving the way with all the steps that I've been taking to get there. So
yeah, you've got a crazy foundation already established, and I'll tell you, even once, and I'm putting this out there right now, once these 122 or 116 units, I'm already growing your portfolio, by the way, for you.
Perfect.
Once those all get through the end zone, that's just the next stepping stone for you to keep moving forward. So that's crazy.
Yeah, I think so. It's I love systems and processes and working with an incredible team. I've already got an incredible dream team, in Edmonton. So I'd love to kind of, work and build a team, on this side. It's so much fun. And I think there's so much opportunity out there to bring, incredible opportunities to people. And doing it sort of like slow and methodical. It's not a race. One of the biggest pet peeves that, and I know we've said like number of doors, but that's also at the same time one of my biggest pet peeves, because I think it's like, you have to look to the fundamentals of what someone's portfolio is and how it's been built, right? So I think doing things the right way and building something slow and steady is also important too.
Yeah. And I know I made a little bit of light about 116 units is extremely impressive, but at the same time, that's also 25 years of putting in the reps and doing the work and the process you've gone through, and the roller coaster ride and the ups and the downs and the side steps and all this kind of stuff. It's all led to doing this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like anything, everything leads up to the next step, right?
Yep.
So.
The one thing I really want to do is wanted to share Christine's story, because I think it's a very inspiring, really, for what it can happen over a period of time, and very clearly said is, life's what happens when you're busy making other plans, and lo and behold, you probably didn't realize, you always had in the back of your mind the vision that you wanted to own a real estate firm. That was probably always there. But now you sit there and you go, geez, 116 units I've got my teeth sunk into right now. Holy moly, it must be a little surreal at the moment.
Yeah. And it's also just like, this can happen. Like it's all available. And I think the biggest thing to that is, surrounding yourself with people that are doing what you want to be doing, right? Like you can't build something, quietly on the background without having those conversations and being able to get access to those deals and, learn what you need to learn and talk to who you need to talk to. So I think that's the biggest thing, is making that, once you've made that decision, is, finding the people that you need to kind of help you get there.
Nice. Well done. Well, I'm going to, one last question before we pivot off here, but are you open to having another conversation with maybe going through a couple of your deals down the road?
Oh, I would love to.
I'll let you take the controls, and you can just run a presentation, and we can share. Maybe we'll do a webinar or something together too. It's something.
Yeah, would love to.
Yeah. But before we make that next commitment, let's pivot back to kind of full circle. You're having a conversation with somebody, that person, and I know you shared a little bit with them, but this is a different context. You're having a conversation with somebody and they're feeling a little bit stuck, right? Okay. They're just not sure kind of that next step. They maybe heard your story and it sounds really inspiring, and they're maybe feeling that little overwhelmed. What advice would you give to that person on taking the next step to get a little bit unstuck and into motion?
Into motion. Yeah, I mean, because we all know the biggest thing is taking that action, right? I think it's so interesting. I think a lot of people that I come across, and you probably too, Russell, in a lot of the real estate groups, is, so many people have so much knowledge, but they're not moving forward, right? They're taking all the courses and learning all the things, but haven't moved forward. I would say find yourself a mentor, honestly. And I'm not saying that because, you and I work together. That truly, I really would say find yourself a mentor. And even if that isn't something that you feel like you're in a place, you've got to invest in yourself first and foremost to be able to move forward. Mentorship has been huge in my life, not just in the real estate space, but just in general. But find yourself a mentor or a group of people, if you're not ready for one-on-one mentorship yet, to help. People are really willing to help in this space, I feel like, right? Like there's so many groups, there's so many platforms where people are willing to, help move people forward. I think use that with caution. You have to be careful with the advice that you're, hearing and taking from people. But I think it's important to surround yourself with doing what you want to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Surround yourself with the people, but also be very mindful of not filtering, but be mindful of who you really dive alongside with. Because that was one of the challenges that you've had some frustrations along the way. Sometimes you get to these groups and you see the same people, nobody's doing anything. And then you even get into focus groups and smaller groups, and then just some people just don't do anything, right? But that's totally fine. It just takes time, right? Everybody has their own process.
100%. Yeah. But find yourself some action takers, because I think that's the biggest thing is you want to be on the side of action taking.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like to help pride myself and help with is don't hold me for accountability sometimes, but I love holding people to accountability. That was one of the best things that a lot of people have is, here's what I want to do, here's the action I'm going to take, and then you have to report to somebody on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis on exactly what you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think accountability is the biggest thing. We all know, what not to do or what to do, or, that information is, even if you don't know, is pretty easy to kind of track down, but it's having someone that, you can move forward with.
Yep.
Having a game plan. And so surrounding yourself with the right people, I think, is huge.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I've been just sleeping at the switch here. You've been just dropping the fire all day here and just bringing the flames and dropping bomb after bomb after bomb. And I've been asleep at the switch here, Christine. It's like...
it's the summer. It's August 1st today. I mean, what do you expect, right? We're in summer mode.
Jeez. Whatever happened to this year already? It's like August. It's like blink and away you go. So...
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, just wait until you start getting into the fun part about starting to fill some of those units that are just coming on board now, too. That's another thing. But I'll tell you, we could share another offline conversation if you need to. The quality of the tenant profile coming through is just off the charts. And the rental rates that we're getting, when we analyzed our properties a year ago to what we're actually filling units for now, it's like upwards of $400-$500 more on a per six pack, give or take.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and then when you start factoring that into cap rates and NOIs and stuff like that, it doesn't take too long for the valuations to start going up there quite nicely.
Yeah, which is always a good thing.
Well, Christine, it's been an honor and a privilege to work alongside you. The wake that you create behind the boat that when you go through the water is quite immense. And guys, hook your tow rope and your surfboard up to the wake behind Christine, because she's going places. And I mean that, you know where that's coming from. That's obviously from the bottom of my heart, and it's 100% true.
Oh, thanks, Russell. And thanks for the conversation. And anyone that does want to reach out, please do. I love having conversations about real estate and investing in Edmonton. So if you have questions, if you want to chat, you've got access to my contact there. And thank you, Russell, for having me on. We've been chatting about having this conversation for a while. So nice that we've been able to put together. And
we had this conversation very early in us talking, and you're just, I'm not quite ready. And then eventually came the point, I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah, totally. Year and a half, 2 years later, like, here we go. But yeah, no, so nice to catch up with you this morning. And
and we'll talk more.
Okay.
All right, great. Everybody. Cheers. Bye for now.
Hey, wait a minute. You're still here. Didn't you know the video is over? You know what? Since you stuck around right to the very end, it's time for a little reward, a little bonus for you. Number one, make sure you subscribe. There will be a button below here. Hit that subscribe button, bell notification to not miss an upcoming episode. And over here will be a hand-selected playlist and the next video for you to watch to keep your momentum going forward. All right, gang, let's go.